Welcome to the new episode of All That Jazz. I'm your host, Matias, and I have with me Santiago Dobles. And yeah, I pronounced that right. so
You got it right. Yeah.
so he's many things. He's a sound engineer by profession, but he's most well known, I think, as being a musician, a guitarist, a songwriter, and you're also a martial artist and a martial arts instructor. And also, the way I got to know you is on Reddit. A guy named Transformer Mikey, 3 words, recommended you and said that you know a bit about Kundalini, or
Just
not
a
just
little
a
bit.
bit, not just a bit. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to this person on Reddit because I'm not sure who he is or she, but thank you.
Yeah, it was quite controversial because I said on Reddit, who's the modern day Lisa Nella or Gopi Krishna, and
Oh, that's a
some people
those are
got
big
up in
shoes to
arms.
fill. Those are big shoes to fill.
Right, right, right. But I got a lot of names out of it, so I think Reddit is really useful
Yeah.
to get information like that. All right, so let's start first with the spiritual side. So a lot of my guests, their spiritual journey starts really, really young.
hmm
Yeah. So how does yours start?
Same. I mean, I grew up in a household where my mother believed firmly in God, and my father was not necessarily religious, but he always had books about Taoism and things like that. I think he was more agnostic than anything else. But for myself, I always had a belief in God because my parents taught me that way. My mom did specifically, and my grandmothers, and I was always drawn to meditation, even though I didn't really know what it was. I think we had a discussion about this off the podcast, but
Yes.
I started having experiences where at a young age, they were meditation experiences where I would just literally sit on my bed and think and not daydream, but project my consciousness out, not really knowing what I was doing, but I was having some effects and some things, and so I think it started there. And then in my teenage years, I started to then read. I think I read Siddhartha first, and then I read the Bhagavad Gita, and then I started reading books about yoga, and I started practicing asanas and pranayama and things like this. And then at the same time, I was doing martial arts, and from martial arts, I knew there was an internal side, but I could never find anybody who could teach me that side of it,
Yeah.
you know. And that didn't happen until maybe I was 19 or so. But prior to that, I was already doing on my own, researching things like Kriya Yoga and Hatha Yoga and a little bit of Kundalini Yoga from the Shivananda books that were available at the time.
Right. For those who don't know, the I was years ago. I was also interested in that. The martial arts have the outer style, and also the some of the
Mm.
Eastern ones have an inner, like the harnessing the chi. Right?
Yeah,
Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
yeah, they have a lot of things. On the first layer is to strengthen the body, strengthen the tendons and muscle. Then the second layer is to strengthen the chi, strengthen the flow of chi, which is also the blood flow in the body.
Yeah.
And then on the third layer, you could say it's about projecting energy, receiving energy, dissolving energy. So all internal martial arts that are real are working on three types of energy: dissolving your center, moving your center, or fortifying your center. And that can take many shapes and forms.
Like center. You mean center of gravity or center of chi?
Both. It could
Both.
it could
Oh
be applied
wow.
to anything. It could be applied to your own structure. It could be
It could be
applied to a lot of
then
things.
it could be then applied to professional sports like football or basketball.
100%.
Wow.
100%.
But I
100%.
don't think I've ever heard any professional athletes practicing this. I wonder how it.
They have other words for it. for it. If you look
Okay.
at some Olympic athletes, they're doing things that are similar to what martial artists do, especially the Olympic weightlifters. And and if you look at sports like powerlifting, they do things that are very similar to Iron Shirt Qigong. They just don't call it that. Maybe they don't even know that Asian equivalent to it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they're doing the same idea. They're bracing their breath internally before they do a heavy lift or before they explode with intent and power. It's very similar.
Mm. But they just call it physical preparation. They're like,
Yeah,
need to breathe more, need to breathe more.
they
Okay.
literally call it bracing.
Bracing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so anyhow, so I got very young into meditation and martial arts and a little bit of hatha yoga. And um, I went very deep into yoga until my early 20s or mid 20s. At the same time, I was going into martial arts. And then when I met an internal martial art teacher, that was the person that really helped me fully awaken my Kundalini and awaken my energy.
Okay. So that's when
So,
it really started with the internal
yeah.
martial arts. Right.
Yes, and that training was a lot of holding postures, standing still, holding different martial postures, breathing a specific way, circulating the energy in the meridians or the nadis, as the Hindus call them, and then moving the energy through certain gates of the body, the different chakras and the different marma points in the body.
Was there also something, what about the hara point?
Yeah,
Did that as well?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everything stems from there because that point, um, in the Hindu philosophy, you have in Ayurveda, you supposedly have 72,000 channels that pass through that point.
Mm.
So if you open that point and you strengthen that energy point, then naturally you're going to strengthen all the 72,000 nadis, according to the Ayurvedic
You-
medicine. But if you look at the Taoist approach, and very similar to the Tibetan approach, you activate the hara, then you automatically start to activate the main meridians in the body, and then that helps bring health and all the experiences that people have with it.
So do you think it would be advisable for somebody um, uh, to focus their meditation, let's say, on the hara point?
I 100% think so. Yes,
Okay.
because okay, so I don't know if we had this discussion before when we talked privately, but my teacher, Dr. Glenn Morris, used to say, okay, a lot of people will focus, let's say, on the third eye or the crown center, right, or the heart chakra, um, and then there's a tendency in those practices to think, well, I'm working from my heart chakra, so therefore my frequency is higher,
Right.
or my status is higher.
Right.
And yes, it does oscillate in terms of a wave higher, in terms of the number, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean it's better than anything lower or better than anything higher if something's higher than that. You know what I mean? It's like a piano, right? If you go to a piano and you only play the high keys and say, well, these high keys in the piano are better than all the lower notes, that's not
Right.
true. So there's a misconception in a lot of yoga um, traditions and a lot of esoteric practices to think, oh, well, I'm working on my upper chakras, so this must mean I'm becoming more enlightened, right? So my teacher used to say, it's like a building, right? So if you have everybody in the penthouse, who's in the middle of the building, who's in the basement, who's in the parking lot, who's in the mezzanine, you know?
Right.
Um, if you're really in tune with the building, you know what's going on all floors,
Right.
right?
I think this is a crucial point because to master the basics is key. To master the fundamentals of life, to master which is the
100%.
base chakra, the
Yeah, the
sacral
physicality.
chakra. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
and because I think if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the I have a theory that a lot of the gurus that fell because they had some kind of vulnerabilities in the lower chakras, maybe in their, they still wanted power, they still wanted sex, but they were
Oh
they
yeah,
were focusing
yeah,
on this, and then when the opportunity arose, boom, they crashed, you know.
Exactly, exactly. They're not very rooted. They're not very
Right.
connected to the earth in terms of their connection. And also, they keep their students up in the upper chakra. So they're very spacey and spaced out, and they can be easily manipulated. But if
Right.
you're in your hara and your hara is strong, it's very hard to manipulate you physically or spiritually. So,
I've never meditated on a hara, but I have a friend that did, so I might try that, because hara is uh, for me it sounded scary. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. There
hmm
was I had an experience with grounding in a hypnosis class, of all
okay.
things. The teacher
Oh
was
wow.
like, the teacher, yeah, Georgina Cannon. She was this teacher in Toronto, and she was like demonstrating the power of mind, I guess. And she was like, grounding is very important. No, she was demonstrating the importance of grounding, right? So she was like, I think she was saying like from a belly button, but just lower down, basically the hard point, and focus energy going down from one leg and going to the ground, and then the other leg, and then
Okay.
so we'd have a person on, and we first try to lift the person, and then she would say to the person, try to ground yourself, first one leg then the other, and then it'd be harder to lift the person, and everybody would be like, woo. It's like, it's crazy, but there is definitely something to that, right?
There is something to it because, okay, so let's start with another concept that my teacher used to say, right? Is um, this is a biological process. Okay. So all of these things, Kundalini, meditation, energy work, they are connected directly to the physical body. You cannot
Yeah.
exclude the physical body from it. Some people think you can, but you cannot. So the hara is directly connected to the abdomen, the lower abdomen. Okay. When you breathe and you inflate the lower hara like a balloon, okay, or the lower abdomen, the diaphragm, you can fill more air and more oxygen and
Hmm.
cause more oxygen, more blood flow to occur in the lower area. So by nature, you're going to naturally stimulate and oxygenate the lower part of your body. Okay. So when you do that, even if you're not trying to, but you fill up the lower diaphragm, automatically you're stimulating the nerves and the blood in the veins going to the legs. Okay. In martial art, one of the reasons why, like in old kung fu and old traditional martial art, they work so much on the low stances, the horse stance. I'm sure you've seen the movies like Jackie Chan where he's
Oh,
squatting low.
yeah, I've tried maybe a minute or 2 minutes, and it's like too much for me. It's like,
Okay, well, I'm gonna invite you to try 10 minutes and see what happens to you
10
energetically.
minutes.
Yes. So anyhow,
All
so,
right.
so what happens is once the legs are shaking and they cannot sustain you, the abdomen kicks in and reinforces, and all the other muscles around help to stabilize and reinforce. So the body's sending the signal to send more chi to the legs. Okay, so all these things that people do, whether it's in hypnosis or in kinesiology, where they show you, oh, root yourself, and then you'll see the person becomes immovable. That's correct. It's true. And they do it by simply dropping their awareness from here down to their lower dantian. Okay,
Mm.
but then there's a there's another level of that. Then you have to sustain that. So you see it in Tai Chi when they do push hands. They stay very rooted throughout the entire exercise. And the martial art that I practice, the Pencak silat, is all about those low stances and keeping that energy rooted. So you're always connected to the earth. Everything starts and builds from the earth up. So just like if I want to build a building in your neighborhood, I have to build a strong foundation from the earth up. I can't just build the building from the top down. It's not going to work.
Right.
You
Right.
see? So in Kundalini, if we go back to Kundalini or meditation, if you do not have a foundation, okay, and if you're not grounded and rooted, there's no way you're going to be able to sustain the voltage, the energy required, because there's two energy flows. There's one that goes from the ground or from the earth up to the sky, and
Mm-hmm.
then one that comes from the sky down to the earth. The one from the sky down to the earth is a very subtle form of lightning, if you will. If you cannot sustain that voltage, what do you think happens to the physical body? It burns up.
Right.
Okay. And then that's where people do stupid things or they get crazy or they lose themselves, right? And it
Manic. They
happens.
become manic.
Yeah, yeah, it happens because they're not grounded or rooted, or the teacher did not show them how to do that, you know? Um, in some of the Indian traditions, they show you how to open the Kundalini, but they don't show you how to bring it back down safely.
Mm.
Okay. There are systems that do, but it's rare, you know? The ones that circulate the energy, this is now closer to the balance, if you will.
Right. It occurred to me that when you're talking about top down and bottom up, it's kind of like it has a correlation in economics, because
Absolutely.
the economic growth is better if it's from bottom up rather than dumping money from the top down, because
Correct.
bottom up is way
Correct.
better than top down.
Correct. If I just print a lot of money and throw money at you that's basically backed by nothing, what do you think's going to happen?
Wow, that's an amazing realization,
and, and
actually.
and and then back to what we were talking about, the idea of having one chakra. So like, I'm sure you've met people like this. They say, oh well, I meditate in my crown chakra, therefore I'm more enlightened. That's like saying, well, I only buy stocks in the stock market when the stocks are high, not when they're low.
Right, right, right,
You know what I'm saying? It's everything is balanced, and once you understand it, you start to see it in everything in life, not just
right.
meditation, not just
There's a thing that really resonates with me is two things. One, from the Bible, it says if you have talents, you should work on them rather than bury them and all that,
absolutely.
which implies that you have to um, use what you have in the physical realm and whatever talents you have, and put it forth in your life. And also the second one is my teacher, one of the most influential teachers in my life, David R. Hawkins. In one of his interviews, I think it was with Oprah, he said that you have to first master the world before you transcend it.
Exactly. You cannot
Right,
escape the world until you've mastered the world. And
right,
that's why, if you look in the old traditions, they would wait until you were older to go on that path because you've already lived your life. You've already became a father, a grandfather, or, you've had success in the world. Then it's easier to let go of things,
right.
And not only that, you have a foundation. So, for example, when I was 18 and, in late teenagers, early 20s, I didn't care about money or anything like that. I was broke, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't afford to sustain my own life. But here I was trying to do all these enlightened things and advanced kriyas and all this advanced stuff, right? Which is fantastic, but I didn't have a pot to piss in, right? And it's not a bad thing. It was good because I had the time to spend 2, 3, 4 hours a day of training, even sometimes more. Sometimes I would do up to 8 hours of training. But after a while, you need to find a balance and you need to also invest in your future because you're going to be on this planet for a while, right? So you have to sustain yourself and hopefully sustain others around you that you care about.
Right.
And ideally, even create something that you could make a generosity later on down the road that would have an impact on people that are less fortunate.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a firm believer in, even the way I practice. I told you this privately, invest in yourself every hour, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? And then if you take that same philosophy, invest in yourself financially, right? So every paycheck you get, put 10% of what you make away, invest it. You're young now. How old are you now?
35,
There.
actually.
So you should be
Hmm.
doing that now. So by the time you're my age, you have put some money away and it grows, the interest, it compounds, right? So let's say you let that money grow and invest for 40 years, 50 years. Now you have money, generational wealth for your family, your kids, and you have something that you could donate to a good cause that you find worthy of. It's more powerful if I can donate $1 million, for example, to St. Jude's for cancer, right? Cancer patients, than to just give $10 today and then I don't have those $10 anymore. You know what I mean? You
Right.
you 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 want to learn, for example, and again, it applies to spirituality, right? So when you're young and you have some effects in your meditations, you think, oh wow, this is amazing, I'm something special, right? And it happens to a lot of people. The first thing you see people do is go, oh, I'm a healer. Right? And then they want to go out and heal the world, which is okay, it's fine. But if they just spent more time cultivating, right, and more time developing themselves and more time understanding the different stages of whatever enlightenment is, and um, they let that ferment a little more, like 10, 20 years more down the road, now that chi is more potent, that energy is more potent. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So for example, the 18-year-old me who was discovering how to use energy and how to give somebody energy is not the same as the energy person of myself who's 43 years old, who's been doing it for over 20 years. You see what I mean?
Right.
So time and grade there's something to be said about that.
I,
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
I want to finish, and then I'm asking something.
No, I was
Maybe
going to
to.
say, and it happened to me, and everything I'm saying is also, um, I'm guilty of it too. Okay, everybody's guilty of it, especially I was very young and I had a lot of spiritual things happen, spiritual awakenings and spiritual meditations effect, but they're also a trap. We talked about this, the siddhis and things like that. They're a trap because when you start to taste some of that, you think, oh, I'm special, or oh, I'm this, right? Then the ego gets involved. You have to just get rid of all of that, all of the ego things behind it, and just say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to keep going on my path. Oh, this is a new position in my path. Okay, I look at it, I study it, I keep moving. The journey is more important than stopping by. So it's like a highway, right? You stop at one stop to get gas. You stop at another one to get a cup of coffee. You stop at another one to get a bagel with cream cheese, right? But the most important thing is you get back on the road. You keep moving as forward as wherever you have that goal to do, you move towards that goal, and you can apply that in your spirituality, your life, your work, your career, whatever, but you keep moving. For example, this morning I had martial art class, early in the morning, and I could say to myself, oh, what's the point of getting up at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning to teach my students? I could sleep an extra hour, right?
Mm,
But me teaching them is helping them out, and me training is helping me out. There's a purpose in being on that path,
yes.
and maybe I don't even understand it now, but maybe 20 years from now I might understand it. You know what I'm saying? But the most important thing is that you're on the path. You're training something. You're whether it's meditation or pranayama or qigong, and when these things start to give you some benefit or some effect, and you can tangibly see something, don't get attached to that. Just keep training. Train harder. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So
Because
so, so
Kundalini
sorry,
has
go ahead.
its own gifts, right? So then
Of
people
course,
become enamored by them,
of
right?
course, of course. It amplified. Look, my teacher, Dr. Morris, always said this: it amplifies what you are. So if you're a nice person, it's going to amplify that. If you're an asshole, it's going to amplify that. If you are you know a charismatic person, it's going to amplify that. It's going to amplify everything you are.
Right. There's some
So you
people,
have to put it to use.
right? Some people have said I'm in the past that I'm stubborn, let's say, and still to this day, some people say that because in some things I'm just like one, I just like decide, and this is the way it is, and that's it, and then I take it. So I guess are they two separate things? Is Kundalini changing your personality, or is changing your personality a separate thing from the Kundalini awakening?
Okay, let me try to answer that in the most simplest way possible. The first thing you become aware of, okay, is, well, let me rephrase that. When the Kundalini hits the crown chakra, okay, and it pierces the crown, you there's a tendency in a lot of people to lose their ego for a split moment, and they go, oh wow, it's like they see God or they feel God. Okay, they feel this godliness, this
Yeah.
divine energy, this bliss, incomprehensible bliss. And usually a lot of people will cry, they'll smile, they'll have a moment in time where their cognitive self seems so small. Okay. And then what happens is if the Kundalini pierces, and if they don't, if they keep the awareness up there, it starts to consume a lot of the physical body, and all the energy is going up here and out, right? And what happens there is very spiritual, is very blissful. But to be in this world, you need to also be in here in the heart and in this body, right? So you have to know how to safely bring that energy back down. Okay. When that happens, you then are combining, let's say, your, and I don't want to use these terms, but I'm going to go ahead and use it because it's kind of the best way to think about it. Your lower self and your higher self combined. Okay. The person you are here is now in tune with your infinite self. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily make one perfect because I don't think there's a single human being out there that's perfect. Um, and I actually believe that to be in this plane, you have to have some karma or something has to be making you physicalized. You see what
Right.
I mean?
Of course. Of course.
So I think what we were talking about is this integration of your higher self into your physical body, or combining. And what happens is a lot of times when the Kundalini starts to hit the third eye in the crown center, um, if the person is not careful and they haven't dissolved their ego, it can make them very big headed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You see this, and I'm not going to say names, but there's some gurus that they feel like they're infallible or they can't be touched.
Right.
Okay. Or that they can manipulate a lot of people and no consequences. Right. But that's not how nature works. Okay. So in nature, mountains change over time. Right.
Right.
uh, the simplest thing like rain can cause a landslide. You see, so humility goes a long way. So even if you have, you need some ego. Ego is good for you to get shit done, especially in this world. If you don't have an ego, you're not going to get anything done. If you didn't have an ego, you wouldn't set up this podcast right now, which probably is going to help a lot of people. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? So
Yep.
you need a little bit of ego in this life. It's not you should never say, oh, I don't need my ego. No, no, your ego's there for a reason. But the trick is to understand humility. And no matter how advanced you get on anything you do, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, whether it's financial, is to always have some sense of humility and some sense of purpose of the fact that your Kundalini is only happening because if you think of it this way, let's go to the shamanic point of view. It's because the earth and the sky decided that you were a suitable conduit.
Hmm.
So you didn't pick it, it picked you. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
We have this saying in martial arts, the silat doesn't pick, you don't pick silat, silat chooses you. And when
Right.
they say silat, it's the spirit of that martial art, right? And ultimately that goes back to yin and yang, mother and father. Uh,
Right.
in the Hindus is Shiva Shakti, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. You can
In
give it whatever
writing,
name you want to give it.
there's a book I read. I forget the title, but she was talking about I think Elizabeth Gilbert, and she was talking about how there's a muse, and they used to in old Italian culture they used to call it that the muse got me. It's not the genius that I have the genius. Is that
The
the
muse, yes.
muse the muse has come, and now I'm able to write all this fantastic thing. So it's not, you can't take personal credit because it's coming from the
Yeah, you
inspiration is
can.
coming from out there.
Exactly. You can't go and sit in meditation and think, oh, I did this. No, it was divine grace. It's the universe. It's the earth. It's the fact that you were allowed yourself to be a conduit at that moment in time, and then things start to evolve from there. You
Right.
know.
So in today's world, there's a lot of people like me that um, see spirituality, and like you actually also start spirituality really young and all that. So
Hmm.
I guess your recommendation would be to, unless that is your path to leave the world, but I think the vast majority of people, they're meant to be in the world, to contribute in the world, and to.
Yes, so exactly. And not to cut you off, but how can we make the world a better place, even if it's through one person? How can you co-create this world into a better world? How can, and I look at it this way, how can I make somebody like you more badass? You
Right.
know? What can I share with you to make you a more kick-ass human being? Because I don't believe that whatever designed you, whatever created you, whatever you want to give it that name, I don't think it designed you to do nothing. I think it designed you to do something, you know?
Right.
Look at even in nature, right? You go to a farm, there's a hierarchy of in the animal kingdom. There's a hierarchy even in the way fruits grow and vegetables grow and plants grow. They all serve a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times you have people on a spiritual path where they do something spiritually. For example, they practice a yoga or something, and they want to disconnect from the world. They want to quit their job and they want to go live in India. They want to go live in an ashram,
Yeah.
right? Okay. All right. That's fine. You can do that. Go and experience that. You'll come back though, you know? Did it change the world? Did it change the people around you? I don't know. I can't answer that. All I know is that for me, it's more exciting to be living in the world and at the same time be experiencing spirituality at the same time. You don't have to seclude yourself from the world to be a spiritual person.
Yeah, yeah, you can use the world and all of its upsets and challenges to transmute it into to see the
Yes.
challenge as a growth and
Yeah.
go forth.
Well, and look at you look at in the Tibetan philosophies and some of the Hindu philosophies, you have a renunciation path where people will renunciate everything and oh no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to eat meat because I don't want to create this karma or whatever. Then you have the tantric path, which says, hey, you know what, I could transmute it. Then you have the Dzogchen path, which Dzogchen says, hey, we're already divine. Where everything that makes us up. I mean, listen, you come from the stars,
Right.
we are elements of the sun just manifesting in this realm. So whether we like it or not, you're already part of the divine picture or the divine plan, you know and some people don't. That's a hard pill to swallow for some people, but
Because they're not there yet. So I'm like, how come I'm not feeling it? How come I'm not
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
it?
Well, you have three ways to do that, to feel it, or several ways, but I'll give you one way.
Okay.
One way is you can really sit and meditate and work on techniques that help you get to the non-dual state. Okay,
Hmm.
there are techniques like that. The other way is the way the shamans do it, right? They use something like ayahuasca or DMT, or they use some kind of mushroom tea, you know um
But isn't that a shortcut though? Isn't there a price
yes,
to pay for that?
there's a big price to pay for all of that. Now, that being said, if you look at some of the shamanic traditions, they they were not all, go into retreat and get as high as possible and see what happens. Some of them are like that. Other ones were very functional tribal people, right? So instead of consuming, a massive amount of mushrooms or a massive amount of DMT, they would microdose.
Yeah.
And then the microdosing allowed them to still be functional farming, going hunting, taking care of their families. And then little by little, that helped the neurons and the connections make the connections necessary to experience and to get whatever lesson they were supposed to learn.
Right.
So, for
Right.
example, in the Indonesian shamanism, which is where my martial art comes from, there's this philosophy that everything has a teacher, right? Several teachers. So every concept in life has a martial teacher, a healing teacher, and a spiritual teacher.
Hmm.
Okay. So for example, you study a plant, for example. That plant can teach you a martial art, can teach you a healing method, can teach you an enlightenment method. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's kind of like distinction between physical, mental, and spiritual
Kind of,
kind of.
yes, yeah. And again, it's very broad, but if you look at also the Native American traditions, they have that too. They call it medicine, the big medicines.
Yes.
Everything in life has a medicine. Okay, so you can learn from everything. I'm not an advocate for you to lose your senses completely where you can't function, but I am an advocate in saying, hey, you know what? Everything's a tool. So if used correctly, microdosing could help somebody. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of balance. Everything's balance.
Yeah.
You should still be able to, for example, go in the world, go work, invest in the S&P 500, still have an hour or two to meditate every day, make love to your wife, take care of your kids, right? And
Right.
still be a functional human and still be a spiritual person.
Yeah, especially if you haven't mastered the world. I think that that would be sound advice to um be in the world. Um
Yes, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful thing.
I mean, some people say it's not a beautiful place or this and that, but it's. I think your perception of the world is largely based on your state of mind, state of consciousness, level of
Yeah,
consciousness, where you are, basically.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to be fair, there's a balance. Yes, there are fucked up things in the world. There's no denying that. There's negative things in the world, but there's also very positive things in the world. And just like you said, your perception, if you wake up in the morning wanting to be outside and enjoy the beauty that nature has to offer you, you're going to feel it. But if
Mm,
you just ignore that or don't even pay attention, there's a lot of people that live in the world that don't even look at the sun. They're so busy they don't even take time to look at the sun or to look at the trees or look at the animals. You know what I mean? but but if you learn to see nature in everything, you're going to find nature no matter where you are, even if you're in the biggest city or the most busiest city. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
I remember, I'll tell you a really cool story. I was with one of my martial art teachers
Yes.
who's also he's a shaman. He's internal energy. He knows what he's doing. I'll just leave it at that. um, we were training in a building, and he was talking about some qigong exercises and internal energy and to feel the earth. And one of the students said, oh, but we're not outside, we're not, it was raining for some reason, so we couldn't train outside. And he's like, we're not by nature, so it's kind of hard to focus. And he looks at the wall and he knocks the wall, right? So he
Yeah.
and he goes, is there not sand and stone and earthy elements in the walls? He goes, the
Right.
earth is all around you. The nature is all around you. You just have to understand it. you know and the same thing, they said, oh, but there's no fire. So then he points at the light bulb. And he's like, well, is there not light and energy and fire there? you know
I
you
love
see,
that.
it's so simple, but it's true. You know what I mean?
um, I want to talk about some of the dangers of awakening Kundalini, because some people read about it. It's I don't think it's a thing to be glamorized. It's a thing to be
No.
treated with caution as well, because I know, unfortunately, I know some people um that have seemingly gone manic for a period of time after having these great spiritual experiences. So it's and it also, it seems like it's not a thing you can, once the process has started, it
you
can't, you can't
you
reverse
can't
it.
you can't put it back.
Right. And okay, I want to share also experience
Yeah,
that
please.
that happened unintentionally. I'm not saying my Kundalini is awakened or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I've had some experiences, but when I was in Scotland, I knew a Reiki teacher, and so she did Reiki on me, and she was like, at the time I was dabbling, learning online from my friend Andrew, some of his healing methods, because he developed his own healing method. So I tried on my own, but it was basically mostly I was using the Christian method, help me God to heal this person,
Sure.
kind of.
Sure.
But what started happening was she was starting to experience an energy surge from her feet up to
Spine.
the heart, yeah, up to the
Mhm.
spine, up to the way, all the way to the heart chakra, or sometimes to the crown as well. And this happened like several times, and maybe it seemed to me that inadvertently I started awakening a little bit of it. If it was,
Oh, so you started feeling it too, or only
oh
she did?
no, she did only.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you felt that you had something to do with that.
Maybe the prayer had the intention behind it, because the intention was healing, but I didn't expect that she was gonna feel all this,
Okay, so I'll tell you something. Tell you two things.
okay.
Back to what you said about I'm not sure if my Kundalini is awakened or open or anything like that. Every human being who's alive has a little bit of Kundalini open. If they did not, they would be dead,
Okay.
because Kundalini is life energy, it's life force. So if you don't have the life force, you're dead.
But isn't there a difference between chi and Kundalini awakening?
Yes, there's a difference between, okay, chi is just energy. There can be many chis, many forms of
Mm,
chi.
mm,
Uh, Kundalini is purely life force energy, or creative force.
yeah.
When your parents got together and your father and mother got together, right? The seed and the egg, when they got together, they create a bang, a flash of energy. That's Kundalini.
Right.
Okay, and that sparked your life. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So every human has a little bit of Kundalini, whether they know it or not. And over time, it starts to awaken further and further. Sometimes it takes people lifetimes to get it to an experience where they think, oh my God, I'm awakening my Kundalini or whatever. But the point is, in that time when you were doing that prayer to your friend, you're channeling this divine energy. Okay. That divine energy is a yang energy. Okay.
Mm,
It comes from heaven down, or from sky down. Okay. It's a type of Kundalini energy. Remember I told you there's energies that go up and energies that go down.
right. Right.
That energy can spark and ignite. So, for example, if you look at nature, if lightning strikes a mountain, the trees can catch on fire.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that energy, and the Christians call it the Holy Ghost,
Mm-hmm.
okay, or the baptism by fire. Correct me if I'm wrong. This energy can ignite the other person's energy. So, it's like a battery charge, it's jumping the battery. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it might have been that you might have been able to handle that energy more than that person, because maybe at that time you might have been more grounded, and that's maybe why you didn't necessarily feel as much as the other person did.
Mm-hmm.
But the energy itself was a catalyst towards that other person, and it ignited that energy. The other thing is also something to consider: chi, Kundalini, whatever you want to call it, is billions of years old. It's intelligent in its own form. Neither you nor I nor any master can necessarily tell it what to do. We can only suggest. In the suggestion, it might bend its will to our suggestion and our intention. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
But it doesn't need you or me. You see what I'm saying? It's
Yep.
way beyond and way older than we are. It knows what to do. So it's going to know, if I send you energy now, it's going to know what to do, where to go, what's the most important thing on the priority energetically towards you as an individual. I don't have any control of that. I might have control of where I'm projecting the energy. I may have some intent. I may
Mm-hmm.
suggest, but the energy is going to do what the energy wants to do anyways.
Right. Right. So it has an intelligence of its own when the
Yeah.
Kundalini starts, and I think in the Catholic tradition as well, there's accounts of saints. Um, some of them even experiencing bilocation. Padre Pio, a famous Italian saint,
Yes.
uh, bilocation, which seemed very cool actually. And in one location he was napping, in another he was taking bread to the poor. Is kind of handy.
Listen, a lot of strange things can happen.
Right.
Um, I was with one of my teachers, my Kundalini teacher. Dr. Glenn Morris, and we
Mm.
were in a house um, in Fort Lauderdale, and it was like a seminar, you know. And then some of us stayed at the house to sleep over because it was too far to drive to go home to come back. We were there for like a week training with him. And in one of the nights that we were there, um, I remember I saw him in the living room, right? And another friend of mine at the same time went into his room by accident and they saw him sleeping. You get me? At the
Wow.
same time.
At the same time.
Yeah. And so it was kind of mind boggling. Like, how's this possible? You know? And he distinctively had a conversation with me and another person that was with me at the same time, talking to us, while at the same time the other person was in his bedroom seeing him sleeping and snoring.
But how did you later confirm it was at the same time?
Because, oh, okay, I see what you mean. That's a good question. Basically, we talked about it,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
and
okay.
and you know, and we said, hey, he was talking to us, and they're like, how's that possible? He was in his room sleeping. I was just there, you know.
Right. Gotcha.
And nobody had consumed any drugs, nothing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see, and towards his later years, he was telling me that he was working on bilocation, and
Is
he said something like, "Oh, I'm trying to understand bilocation."
right. Um I think I shared with you before the Ramakrishna parable of this, but the audience might not know. Ramakrishna, one of my favorite Hindu mystics. He anyway, there's a book called, I think, Saints of Ramakrishna, and he shares there's a monk that experienced siddhis, which, well, wanted to, no, actually wanted to experience siddhis, which is I
Hmm.
guess a Hindu term for a special ability. So he wanted to learn how to come across
Paranormal abilities, yeah.
paranormal ability, right? So wanted to come across the river without using a boat. So he
Yeah,
learned
this
to
is great.
walk on the river basically, and to go across. And it took him 10 years. And he goes to his teacher and he's like, teacher, I know how to cross the river without using a boat. I can just walk. And the teacher's like, yeah, it just costs 10 cents. Why did you waste 10 years of your life doing this?
Exactly, exactly.
So obviously there's a big danger in glamorizing it, because it stops your spiritual growth. I would imagine if you're just focusing on that, you stopped at the gas station in a way, and you're not progressing, you're just
Yeah, and
expanding it.
then you spend you know,
Yeah.
a lot of time in the gas station doing nothing.
Exactly.
You know, and that happens in life, you know, especially when Kundalini starts to open. People who, especially in men, when Kundalini opens in men, women feel it. So now women get attracted to you, you know. And then it's like, so my teacher used to say, you know, you become like a Christmas tree. You're bright, you're light everywhere. But now everything comes to get that light.
Right.
So maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe you should learn how to uh, dim the light or change the color a little bit and just open it when you want to, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to be a little more conservative about how you do things, you know.
Not to be a Christmas light all the time and just fire all.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know, when I was younger, I was constantly like that all the time, and it did a lot of good things, but it also got me into trouble with some things. So it's better to just stick to your path, and you know, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You know.
Right. Let's talk about another thing that I think some people would strongly disagree, which is meat. I firmly believe, I'm a believer, and that for myself, it's not nothing wrong with eating meat. I think it's a good thing, and we are meat actually, but as a human body. But a lot of people have, and this, I think this comes back to This is three things: the Buddhism, Hinduism, and the modern movement towards vegetarianism slash vegan.
Yeah,
Right,
and helping the environment, blah
right,
blah blah.
right. So what is your opinion on this?
Um, okay, well, let me start with this. The human brain evolved from us eating animal fats, fish, nuts, cow's milk, um, hunting, whatever we could hunt,
Yep.
right? Our brains evolved from eating animal fats. And the more of those fats we consumed, the smarter we got.
Mm,
We then began to use tools and making shelters and making things. So, my humble opinion, you as a human being, the food chain, the food pyramid that you see everybody teaches is backwards. It should be more animal proteins, animal fats, and then vegetables, any kind of greens, and then maybe a little bit of carbohydrates, whatever those can be. In nature, what you find in nature, you don't find bread in nature, you don't find chips, you don't find french fries, right? You
mm,
find nuts and berries.
right.
Okay, so or roots, like potato, like
Yeah.
malanga, yuca, I don't know what you call it, but it's like yuca is like malanga, beans, things like this. So I personally don't have a problem with eating meat. I encourage my students to eat meat because the type of energy practices I teach and I train, if you're not well rounded and well rooted and grounded, you're not going to handle the voltage.
Can you go
And it's
back to
going to
your
it's
story
going to
about?
make yeah,
Sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt. Can you go back to your so you were practicing your meditation and all that, then you meet somebody that
Oh
says,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll tell you the story.
yep.
So, okay, so I'll send you pictures later on, but I was like 110 pounds, 120 pounds,
Mm,
very light, very skinny. And I was doing a lot of meditation and things that were similar to Kriya yoga, a lot of tantric kriyas and hatha yoga and
yep.
breathing exercises and things like that. And I mean to the extreme. I think I told you about this. I used to do like 500 pranayama exercises a day.
Mm.
I would do my headstand Shirshasana for 40 minutes. I would hold Cobra pose for 20 minutes. I mean, pretty extreme,
Right.
you know. In fact, when yoga became popular, I stopped being involved in it because to me, those people were not hardcore enough.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's where my background. So when I met my Kundalini teacher, the first thing he said to me was, you're a little skinny. You need to start eating some meat, you know, and you have some Kundalini, but your energy is like thin. The energy going through the Shushumna Nadi is very thin. You need to
Yep.
widen that. And he said, you need to eat some meat. You need to eat more fish and salmon and red meat. And I didn't understand. And at first I was like, no, this guy's crazy. But now in my case, and I didn't tell you this the other day, I went to go get acupuncture at that time. And the acupuncturist told me the same thing. Hey, you should start eating some meat. It'd be good for your chi. So anyhow, so I started eating the meat. I started feeling better. I started gaining some weight and got some muscle on. And I started being able to generate more energy when I would do my qigong, and I was able to move more energy, feel more energy. We went to a restaurant, and it was a friend of mine who had just got back from India,
Mm-hmm.
and he was on a retreat in India. And he came and he sat down with my Kundalini teacher, Dr. Morris. And my friend was talking about karma and about how you can't eat meat because it doesn't allow you to awaken spiritually and all this stuff. So my teacher looked at him and said, okay, well, this little piece of meat here contains energy from the universe just as much as the plant over there. you know what's to say that one's better or less. And also the meat has proteins, which by science your muscles need those proteins. Your
Right.
body needs those amino acids. So anyhow, long story short, he offered him a piece of raw steak, and and of course, the poor guy was probably malnourished from India. He was skinny, and so my friend gave him this piece of meat, and he put some energy into it. So the guy eats the meat, and when the guy eats the meat, you could see his face just become so blissful, and he was like,
Well,
"Oh, it's like he was falling into samadhi." He was-
wait. What do you mean he put some energy into it? So he cooked it like raw, kind of.
No, no, it was raw. It was raw.
It was like raw, not uncooked.
It was uncooked. It was meat from. We were in a Japanese restaurant, and he ordered
Oh, okay.
some. I forget what you call it, but it's the raw meat. It's the raw. It's not the
Right,
sushi, but it's the raw steak.
right.
And before he gave it to him, he put some chi into it, some energy into it. And so when the guy ate it, you see the guy, he's eating it, and you see his eyes rolling up to the back of his head, and he's like totally blissed out. And my teacher's just laughing, saying, "Hey, you see, anything can be a spiritual nourishment.
Right. But I
So
know a lot of people will have
they're not
strong opinions about
they're
that.
not gonna like this. Yeah, they're not gonna
What?
like what I have to say about it. No, but I'll tell you this. Um, Show me one tribe, one indigenous tribe that does not consume animal or insect proteins. There's not one. And
Yeah.
these are the oldest humans that have been living in the oldest conditions, in the oldest cultures around the world. Show me one tribe that does not eat fish, that does not hunt birds or deer or something, or does not eat insects and things like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, my first girlfriend in Canada, she told me she was a vegetarian for years, and
Hmm.
that but that she started to feel kind of bad, and then when she started, like, I don't know, she one time she wanted to taste meat again, and she could feel her body like, ooh, this is good.
Of course,
This
because
is
okay, blood is
yeah,
chi. Blood is the most physical form of chi.
right.
You see, that's why in Chinese medicine, in Tibetan medicine, they they will prescribe you meat. For example, if you were really sick in Tibet, they would tell you to cook a piece of steak and put onions and garlic and maybe a tomato. Because
Really?
yeah, which is strange, like for example, I'll tell you this. We were in Miami and the Dalai Lama came to Miami. And all these people were like, "Oh, the Dalai Lama's here, the Dalai Lama's here." And they're like, "Oh, let's take him to the vegetarian place." And he said, "No, I need to eat pork. I need to eat some meat." And they asked him why. He says, "Oh, because of my health and my lung condition or whatever." You see,
Oh,
so
wow.
all these in Tibet, they don't eat, they're not vegetarian. Where are you going to find vegetarian in that tundra, freezing cold mountain? You're not going to find tofu there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You eat based on the environment where you live. That's the first thing. Second thing is eat to your blood type. So whatever your blood is, you should eat based on that. And the third thing is do a genetic test to see where your genetics are from, and then eat based on your genetics. Like some people cannot eat potato, some people cannot digest breads.
All right.
Like for my genetics, I do very well if I eat fish and I eat red meat, you know, and vegetables. If I start adding a lot of carbohydrates, I start getting bloating. That doesn't work well. So you have to eat based on your blood, your genetics, and your environment.
Is
It
that
doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for you to get food that's not in your environment. You get what I mean?
right, right? Is that based on any particular book that people can find?
Possibly. I've never read it in a book. I'm just telling you based on what I've learned from
Okay.
from friends of mine that are doctors in Chinese medicine. I have a very close friend of mine is an acupuncturist, and another good friend of mine. He's my personal doctor. He's from Russia, Dr. Gene Nateman. He's here in Miami, Florida, and internal medicine is what he practices. And he's always he always prescribes soup and
So,
broth, bone broth, lots of bone broth. And his explanation is when you consume the bone broth, you're getting those natural fatty acids that are super good for your brain and for your bone marrow. If your bones are healthy, your body's going to be healthy.
Right, but
So,
bone marrow is extremely healthy. Yes.
absolutely, 100%.
Let's talk about going back to drugs. Because I've had people talk about DMT before and things like that, and
Hmm.
obviously you can get an amazing experience with that. But there's
Sure.
so what is the downside of doing that?
Okay. The downside is the following. Can you get there and have that experience without the drug?
Most would say no.
Most would say no. Can you sustain the experience without the drug?
Probably not.
Most would say no,
Yeah,
right?
most would say no.
So the plus is it lets you see everything instantaneous. It lets you be there in that zone, if you will.
Yeah,
And that's a good thing. The negative part is you to be at that depth, you cannot function cognitively for the amount of time that you're high. You see what I'm saying?
no.
Now, DMT,
Explain.
okay, so DMT doesn't last that long, maybe 15 minutes, 20
Right,
minutes, maybe
right.
a half hour. But in that half hour, you're pretty much useless to the rest of the world.
Yep.
Where a yogi or a qigong practitioner who's meditated a lot, he can have a deep experience, or she can have a deep experience, but still be functioning in the world. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So even if it's in a half hour that you're in a deep experience, but you're still capable of getting up and doing whatever else you have to do.
yeah,
Where if you were in a drug, you are at the mercy of the time of however long that trip takes for you to get through it. So, for example, if you do mushrooms, you're going to be, depending on how much you take, you're going to be tripping for 4 to 6 to 8 hours. You know what I mean? So,
mm-hmm.
in that 4 to 8 hours, you're pretty much useless to the rest of the world, right? Again, it's not a bad thing if you have time and if it's a vacation thing and
Yeah,
you've planned to do a shamanic journey.
yeah. Don't
Okay,
go to
then that
work taking mushrooms. That's not a good idea.
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you cannot have that and go to work and live a functional life and raise children if that's what you're doing. But again, if you want the shamanic experience, I think it's okay. Find somebody who has experience with it and go have a shamanic experience.
Hmm.
Don't operate any heavy machinery. You know,
Right. Well, that's
it's
common
like,
sense advice. Yeah.
right. But some people are not common sense. They're stupid, right?
Right.
So So the other thing too with a drug is whether it's cannabis or mushrooms, those, so you look at the spiritual drugs, if you will. You see people use cannabis, mushrooms, MDMA, ayahuasca, or DMT, and LSD,
Yeah.
right? And then the more extreme would be like peyote and opium, right?
Hmm.
Some of those can have addictive features. Okay. The other thing, even like something so simple like tobacco and sugar, those are drugs too.
Right.
Caffeine is a drug. There's a lot of drugs. Chocolate is a drug, right? Um,
I love chocolate.
when I love chocolate too.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Um, if you're using these things and you're not careful, you could be feeding elementals, energies that are connected to you that you might not even be aware of.
Mm.
And then those energies now require that you give them more of that drug. Okay. And then they might share with you some of their experiences, but they're keeping you connected by forcing you to consume more of that drug to feed their needs.
Wow. So that could be
And
sugar as well. That could be like
it
why
could be
people.
sugar. Yes, there are spiritual parasites, energetical parasites. Okay.
Wow.
In the Sufi traditions, you have the jinn, right? The jinn is like the fallen angels. In the Hindu traditions, there's all kinds of names for them. In the shamanic point of view, that's why a lot of times the shaman will have the student fast for a while before they consume anything so that they kill off the parasites, so that then when they consume the nectar of whatever is given to them, it's used solely for that spiritual purpose, not to feed the egos of these parasites. that
Hmm.
want you to consume more of the drug. Does that make sense?
Wow, that's the first time I've heard that even like consuming chocolate or sugar could be feeding energy parasites in your
Of
aura.
course. Of
Oh,
course. Or even inside you. A lot of people can have energetic parasites inside the internal organs or inside an energy channel.
okay, that's a scary thing for me, energy parasites. And for a while, I didn't want to believe that there could be such a thing. But
Hmm.
okay, uh, can you talk about what they are and how to get rid of them?
Okay, sure. Remember what I told you, right? If you're focused on only some chakras, but not all of them, you're allowing these gateways to be open.
Oh,
The
wow.
gateways can open, they can come right in.
Hmm.
So, how do you protect from it? It doesn't mean that you isolate yourself and live in a bubble because that's unrealistic,
Yeah.
but doing natural things like exercise, breathing, some type of yogic practice, being out in the sun, fasting, meditation, prayer. That's why the yogis say prayers. That's why the Christian monks say, Our Father, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. You know that prayer originally had a movement where each section of that prayer corresponded to different chakras in the body
Hmm.
to protect all those gates, all those energy gates, to protect Solomon's temple, which is your body. Does that
Right.
make sense? So protecting these energy gates, that you could use mudras, you could use mantras, you could use prayers, you can come up with your own way to do it. There's 1,000 ways and methods to do these things. um, some of the shamanic traditions is to visualize yourself or a guardian, some type of guardian. In Tibet they use a wrathful deity. In the shamanic traditions they visualize like a warrior uh, energy, and you put a warrior at each gate protecting the gates.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? And at first you could say, well, that's just my imagination. But when you are in those states that we talked about, let's say like a shaman, where you are at a deep level, whether you did it through meditation or you did it through a shamanic drink, now you're face to face with what's there. You can see what's going on. You might in that moment be able to see the parasite or see the energy that's not necessarily beneficial for you. And that's the time when you have to use that spiritual side of martial art, if you will.
Hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
So
That's
like,
why you look at like the Native Americans or any shaman tradition. They have people, they wear the feathers and they wear the bone and they wear the amulet of the animal to give them the strength to
mhm,
defeat whatever it is spiritually that they're interacting with.
right. So even a prayer like Our Father could ward you with most of the things if you pray
I
it.
think I think all traditions have their prayers and they're
Right.
all good. The Arabs use the opening of the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There's a bunch of prayers they use in the Christian tradition. The All Father prayer, right? The one that we were just talking about. Um, there's prayers in the Catholic they use to the Mother Mary, right?
Right.
Um, all of these are good. All of these are good things. In the shamanic traditions, they use their own way of intent and prayer and connection.
Hmm.
Something as simple as reaching out to the heavenly Father and to the heavenly Mother, or to the earthly Mother, right?
Hmm.
Um, to protect yourself from these things, first, also the most important thing is understand that you are already divine. Okay, so by that nature, you're already protected if you understand it.
I've heard also that if you use Jesus' name in the name of Jesus, or rebuke the or
Yeah,
some people use Archangel Michael, things like that are that could be beneficial as well.
absolutely, absolutely. There's, like I said, there's a lot of traditions and they all work well. You
Okay.
pick the one that works for you. You know what I mean?
Can you expand on fasting? Because I've started based on my I have a Christian friend that recommended fasting to me, and I've never considered fasting before. But when I tried for 3 days last year, I noticed I was mentally more sharp,
Oh yeah,
and you know, it was very
because
amazing.
be, okay, so from the science point of view, when you're fasting, your body's going into a state of ketosis, and your body, instead of using sugar or glucose for energy, is using fat and is burning your own fat as fuel.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why people lose a lot of weight when they fast and things like this. Um, Fasting is a great reset to your whole body, and it allows the body to self-consume whatever's not needed anymore. So your cells go into cellular autophagy, right?
Hmm.
Which basically the cells regenerate and things happen like that. On a spiritual level, it cleanses the aura. The aura starts to glow brighter.
Wow.
Okay. Now, you have to be careful with fasting because everything in balance, right? If you're fasting all the time, 10 days in a row, or 3 days in a row, or 40 days in a row, that's fine if you're in a retreat or if you're something like where you don't have to go to work, right?
Yeah.
But if you have to go function, you need some strength. So I would recommend, if you have the time to do it, either you fast 1 day a week for 24 hours, okay? Or once a month, maybe fast for one whole weekend, or do an intermittent fasting, like the way the Sufis do it. In Indonesia, it's very common. They fast throughout the day, 12 to 16 hours, and then they break their fast with something small, like a little bowl of rice with some protein. They eat maybe one meal a day or two meals a day, similar to what you see the Arabs do in Ramadan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And the Christians have it too. The Chinese have it too. They call it BG or Bigu. I think it's Bigu, Bigu, where you basically fast and then you break the fast with one meal, and that's it. So sometimes I'll fast 12 to 16 hours and then I have one or two meals. But at least it's 12 hours or so, or 16 hours, sometimes 18 hours, where the body has time to regenerate the cells, burn off toxins in the internal organs, and obviously burn off some of those parasites because they're all around you. You can burn them up with your own energy. That's why the Tibetans and the Chinese, and you were asking me about the dantian or the hara or
Right.
the middle point. There's a technique that the Tibetans use and the Hindus use it, the Chinese use it, the shamanic cultures use it, where you're stoking that inner fire, and then that inner fire can consume and recycle energy very easily.
Hmm. So I just want to get people kind of a warning not to uh, let's give people like an idea what could happen if they try to awaken their Kundalini prematurely, so people get an idea.
Well, a lot of things can happen. I know people that ended up in mental hospitals. I know
Mm,
people that they lose their relationships, they lose their connection to other people, they disconnect from the world. I mean, it depends on the person. I know people that they cannot handle it and they commit suicide. I've seen that happen too.
mm,
Now, I don't want to scare anybody, because then people say, well, fuck, why am I going to bother doing this Kundalini thing if it's so scary, right? It's a it's a moment where you can get in tune with your shadow self and bring that shadow self into balance.
mm.
And it's also a moment where the universe gives you a spark, literally to light a fire under your ass for you to figure out who you are.
So you told me in private that there's I think 3 ways to deal with Kundalini. 3 ways to
Oh, I
do
think
it.
I told you. I don't remember exactly, but go on, and then I'll remember.
Well, there's one that I don't remember quite exactly, but there was one where you like work with it in the world, and there's one where you completely
Oh,
withdraw.
oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So either you withdraw from the world completely,
Yes.
and you don't focus on this world. You just focus on your spiritual
Yeah.
path. Let's say on your higher self, and eventually you would consume the body, and you would literally leave the body out through the crown, and you'd be gone. Okay,
Mm.
that's one way. I only recommend that if you don't have anything more here to do. You know,
Right.
the other thing would be use the Kundalini to integrate it into you to then be more productive in the world. Create things, create is the energy here. Create more things around you.
Does that mean then limiting your meditation, not to meditate more
No,
than?
no, no, no. Meditate a lot and meditate often.
Okay.
But when you're done with meditation, ground yourself and root yourself and connect yourself back to the world.
Okay.
So that type of thing. And if you do that type of thing, like for example, a simple way to ground yourself is to go outside for a walk. Go for a walk, or go where there's trees and just touch the trees and connect with the trees. Another thing is to go do like a lot of squats or something, a lot of heavy exercise with your legs.
Right.
Really feel your connection to the earth, or go do some martial arts, or that kind of thing. Connect
Even
back to the world.
even if you're inside and you do like let's say a 10-minute horse stance, which is almost impossible, but okay. If you do that, then even though you're inside, you would be a lot more grounded afterward, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
I recommend that. That's an intense exercise if I ever heard one.
So back to what you were asking me. My teacher told me, okay, Dr. Morris told me,
Hmm.
there's okay, Kundalini can happen on its own, meaning people can have a spontaneous awakening. It happens a lot with people who fall down and hit their tailbone, and all of a sudden they start experiencing things. It happens where people, maybe it could have been through a drug, it could have been through ecstatic movement. It happens that some people, like some women will dance, and then all of a sudden they fall into a trance and they open their Kundalini. It could have happened through a sexual moment. It can happen in a lot of ways. Okay. So Kundalini can happen accidentally. Once that Kundalini starts to manifest, there's three purposes for it. It's either used to heal, to enlighten, or for martial arts or for combat.
Hmm.
Okay. Nobody that This doesn't mean you have to be a martial artist, or even have any desire for combat, but understand that Kundalini is either to create or to destroy, or to heal or to mend, right?
Hmm.
So find a purpose and then put the Kundalini into that purpose.
Right. Activating that
Activate in
and
terms of productivity.
right.
Be
And
productive in something.
which is what most people in this world, I think, would choose. Because I think most people are not attracted to become a monk or anything like that. Like some are, but I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with being a monk and going to live in an ashram. That's fine. But that's only escaping the world.
mm,
You're not really more enlightened than the person who's at home with the same tools. You know what I mean?
right, right, right.
It's a fallacy to think that.
Um, well, I wish we could talk more about I think we don't have much time anymore, right? Because
Well, here's the good thing. We can always do another episode another time.
that's it. Because like I said earlier, you're most famous for your music, but okay, last thing is that you live actually. You said to me privately that some people become rock stars with the Kundalini because the energy kind of propel them forward and be.
Yeah.
And some of them are probably in the public eye, but
Oh yeah.
you are more low key and you work as a sound technician, right?
Yeah, I'm very low key. I have a family. I have children. I know, and I can help people with Kundalini, but I don't really talk about it too much.
Right.
I talk to you. I talk to anybody who approaches me about it. I'll share, and I'll help them out however I can. But I mainly, on the public eye, I mainly focus on my career, my music, and martial arts.
Yeah.
My martial art is an internal martial art. So a lot of times I get people who want to already know about internal martial arts. And then I do teach Kundalini based on the way my teacher taught it to me. You can find me on Dr. Glenn Morris's website, KAP, Kundalini Awakening Process. But I don't draw too much attention with it or to it, because we talked about it in private. Um, the Christmas tree example.
Yeah.
When you are, let's say today, you were throwing a lot of fireworks out in the sky and everybody could see them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not New Year's and it's not the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Why are you bringing so much attention to yourself? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've had situations, and we talked about this in private, where I had surprising visits from people. Um, I had twice two government agencies come and ask me to share with them and teach them these methods and these things.
Yeah.
And I said to myself at that point, because at that time I was more public about it and I was out in the world teaching more and doing a lot of seminars and things. But when that happened, something in me said, maybe I shouldn't be so public about this. Maybe
Yeah.
I should let those that want to come, they'll come and train. And those that don't, I'll let them be. The
Yeah.
energy will bring whoever needs to train. That's the way I look at it.
Th-
And the reason I say that is because, we talked about it in private. You know, when two gentlemen come to your door and say they're from the company, you know,
Yeah.
and if you look at the way things are going today in the news, um, I respect all these agencies, and I gladly, like I told you before, I will help any veteran out that needs my help, any law enforcement that needs my help, any medical doctor that needs my help. But I don't want to be under the payroll of any company.
Right. Yeah. And there's a possibility of corruption, that they want you to do something that you don't want to do, and then there's the
Not just
glamorization
not just
part.
that, they take these methods and then they might use them for the wrong reasons, and that can
Yeah,
easily be
and
done
that,
too.
right.
So when you have somebody come to you and say, "Hey, we're from this Department of Warfare," and you go, "Okay, well, what did I do?" You know what I mean? And then they tell you, "Well, we've been watching your teacher. This is when he was still alive. He's not alive anymore." And that's the part where I said, "Okay, you know what? Maybe I'm drawing too much attention. Maybe this is better to keep it low key."
Right, but for me, it didn't strike me as Kundalini could be used in a fight way. But I guess talking to you, I guess they could be, yeah, because you're doing martial arts and internal chi. Right.
Listen, you can look it up. You can Google it. They have been they have been researching internal martial arts ever since, and I'll tell you when. The Russians, actually, it started with Germany. The Nazi Germans started researching it and they started getting their own developments with it. Then the Russians took those ideas and made it their own and made it more proficient.
Mm-hmm.
And when supposedly the story goes, um, supposedly somebody was able to bilocate into a US government building.
Wow.
And when the US government found that out, they said, "Oh, wait a minute." And this was back in the 60s, I think. They started to then open up their own department to research these things. And ever since then, you have, China, Russia, uh, Germany, not so much anymore, but China, Russia, and the US, all three of them have been heavily researching these things behind the public's eye. The public doesn't know about it, to research and to understand and to use these methods to create let's say, a super soldier, or to create a enhanced human being.
But doesn't like having Kundalini indicates like you're spiritually aware. So how would they be able to? How would that person still be in integrity? And if he was using it for warfare, I don't get it. Right.
Look, the even if you didn't open Kundalini, but you practice some of the energy methods, you'd still develop the siddhi, or still develop some of the energy
Oh,
potential
okay.
that it could
Right.
give you. What'll
Wow.
happen eventually, and it has happened, is you'll have people that start on that path and they're taught certain things, and maybe they're taught to use it for warfare or to do some kind of energetic fuckery, if you will. But eventually they have to pay for that. Okay, nature will pass them an invoice, if you know what I'm saying.
Karma. Yeah.
Karma, nature, whatever you want to call it. And then what ends up happening is the person or the individual who's using that, either they will awaken further and realize what they were doing was wrong, and then they will make amends somehow, right? Or they just get taken out. The universe finds a way to take that type of individual out.
Hmm.
And um, you have very spiritual people on very high levels that are like guardians. They're guardians to the planet. They're guardians to their tribe. They're guardians to their network of people.
Right.
And that's, I don't see that in, the only systems I see that in are the shamanic ones, like in the shamanic methods of China, of Indonesia, of Malaysia, of Tibet. You have people today that are in their retreats praying for individuals like you and I.
Hmm.
And there's a spiritual warfare and a spiritual, let's say, psychic self-defense that's occurring all the time on this
Hmm.
planet, you
Spiritual
know.
warfare. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll end on that note.
You're like, oh, we're out of time. That's enough.
No,
But
because
anyhow, that's
I,
why I don't make it public, man. That's why I keep quiet.
it's. I mean, it's. Yeah, a lot of these things we don't know. We don't know what
Hmm.
what goes on behind the scenes, And also, I want to just acknowledge you for because a lot of people don't want to talk about Kundalini publicly as well, because
Yeah.
it can be dangerous. Like because
Yeah. People then think you're crazy or whatever, It has to be a lot of things.
yeah, or you start to think of yourself as you maybe glamorize. I think that's the yeah, that being public with this. I think the danger of being glamorizing it as maybe bigger than ordinary would be.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, like I told you before, if you're humble and your goal is to grow and to learn and to know, then that energy, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, nature,
Hmm.
is going to put you in the right place at the right time to understand more. And if you continue that humble humility and that sense of awe and gratitude towards that energy that is billions of years old, it's infinitely older than we are, you're going to be okay. It's going to allow you to grow and flow and find the right stream to flow through. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that you never get bigger, because the mountain, no matter how big the mountain is, it's still bowing down to the sun. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you keep that perspective, no matter who you are, I think you'll be okay. And we all have our faults. I've certainly been guilty of my own ego at times, but I've learned to respect nature and respect being humble towards this energy, and just being in total awe of it because I've seen what it does around me. So
Hmm.
I just let it be.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. I greatly
Thank you, man. I
enjoyed it,
appreciate it.
and
Thank you. I hope we do it again, and thank you to your friends and followers and everybody. And if I can be of service to anybody, just let me know.
it's pretty small right now, but God willing, this will grow. And thank you everybody for listening and watching. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.